Hello. All right, so I'm just going to wait a couple of moments for people to spill in. But to introduce myself, my name is Stephanie Fox, and I'm really pleased that you've all tuned in to this webinar Wednesday. I'm going to be moderating the webinar, and we also have the rest of the team on the call. We've got Julian Balding, Paul Squirrel, and Lizzie Gold. So they'll give you a little wave right now. And if you need any help, they will be able to assist you. So just a bit of housekeeping before I introduce our speakers. Timings, I will now give a 5-minute intro. Then our speakers will talk for 35 minutes. We'll then have 15 minutes for Q&A right at the end. And we're aiming to finish by 1:55 London time, so you can be ready for your next virtual appointment. I've muted everyone's microphones, so please do keep them muted. If we're asking a question from you, we can unmute them. But that being said, if you keep your videos on, it'd be really great because then speakers have some friendly faces to present to. As I said, we'll have a Q&A portion right at the end. If you have a burning question while our speakers are talking, you can just send them directly to me in the chat. So go to your chat box, and where it says to, there's a drop down menu, and instead of everyone, select Stephanie Fox. I'm going to go through all of the questions afterwards. If you would like to ask the question yourself, just say, I'll ask. If you prefer for me to ask for you, that's totally fine. And just say, please ask yourself. And you should hopefully have your Zoom viewing mode set to speaker view. If not, you can click speaker view at the top right of your screen. We have 2 speakers today, and they'll be sharing slides on their screens. So if you can't see their speaker windows when their slides are on the screen, just select Show Active Speaker Video. If you have any technical issues, you can message Lizzie Gold directly in the chat, or you can email Lizzie at lizzi.gold@thenetworkone.com. We are currently recording this webinar, so if you'd rather not take notes and just fully engage, that's totally fine. We'll send the link around afterwards. And if for any reason the whole thing crashes, just wait a couple of minutes and log in with the same link that you used to log in this afternoon. Thank you very much, especially if you've heard that before. Now I'm pleased to introduce our speakers, Prerna Pant and Kay Obusan of Circus Social. Prerna Pant is General Manager at Circus Social. She has over 15 years of experience in the digital marketing space in roles that span digital and social media strategy, 360 marketing, and data analytics. Her strengths in digital strategy and marketing have seen her in leadership roles in both agencies and in-house. Kay Obusan is Head of Insights and Innovation at Circus Social. Kay has worked in the digital analytics and consumer insights space for the past 8 years for agencies, brands, and consultancies like Capgemini, Unilever, McCann, and Havas. She has spoken about social listening and digital research for a number of events and webinars in the Philippines and Singapore. Today, Prerna and Kay will be uncovering Southeast Asia's pioneering social media platforms and patterns. Without further ado, I'm pleased to
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Hey, everybody. Good morning or good afternoon or good evening if you're dialing in from Asia Pacific, which is the part of the world that we are in right now. I'm just going to share my screen so that everybody can see our slides and we can get started. Lovely. All right. So today we're going to be talking about a topic that's very close to mine and Kay's heart, which is social media in Southeast Asia, what it means, how to use it, and of course, a few case studies on how we've really been able to leverage the social media ecosystem in Southeast Asia for our clients. So just in case you're wondering, a few of the things that we'll go through today. I'll give you a very, very short introduction to Circus Social and who we are, and then jump right into social media in Southeast Asia and what that actually means. And then what it takes for you to kind of win with social media platforms in Southeast Asia. supported by some case studies from work that we've actually done that will help you target audiences more effectively. We'll end with just a couple of quick takeaways, and then, of course, leave some time for you to ask questions, and promise that we'll present for 35 minutes or less today. So just to start with, I know Stephanie's given a really nice introduction to us, but I also wanted to talk about our Southeast Asia experience. So I was born in India, but I have lived in 5 different countries, and I'm currently speaking to you from Singapore, where it is about 8 p.m. And with me, I have my colleague, Kay, who'll just tell you where she is.
Hi, I'm Kay. So I work with Perna in Circo Social in Singapore, but right now I'm calling from the Philippines. So I'm Filipino. I was born and raised here, but I've worked in 3 countries in Southeast Asia already. So I've been exposed to like the social media landscape in Southeast Asia for the past 8 years.
Thanks so much for that, Kay. So, I think Kay usually works with us from Singapore, but since the start of COVID has been stuck in the Philippines, and we're hoping to get her back into Singapore very soon once the travel restrictions are lifted. So Circa Social, who are we? We help brands and agencies make sense of the social and digital ecosystem in APAC. And that's really our specialty. We have a social intelligence platform that's called 2020 for perfect vision into your digital ecosystem, as well as a range of analysis and research that we offer to different brands based on what we pick up in digital. Today, however, instead of looking at all of APAC, we thought we'd just focus on Southeast Asia. And within this very diverse ecosystem, you will find a lot of different things that are happening. So although it is a very small land space, the region has about 600 million people and is growing very, very fast. The population is young and is very tech savvy, which makes it very attractive for brands from a macro perspective. There's also a lot of gamification when it comes to social media, as well as the use of live streaming, which much more than what we see typically in the West. You'll see regions like Thailand and the Philippines that have the highest use of Instagram hashtags per square meter, strangely enough. And then also places like Vietnam and Thailand that have the highest number of videos consumed per capita. So, I'm not going to show you all those videos or talk about all those hashtags, but we're really going to help you, I think, break the myths of what you thought social media in Asia really is. So I think Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, yep, we know all of those. That's all mainstream here. But let's introduce you to what social media in Asia really means, going much beyond Facebook and Instagram into things like Naver, which is the biggest platform in Korea, or maybe Pantip, that's the biggest forum where it kind of started as a tech forum and then evolved in Thailand. Or Bilibili, maybe, that's a mix of a video streaming and text platform from China. So this whole ecosystem is something of its own. And although we won't be going into every single platform today, we wanted you to kind of look beyond what you might be used to when it comes to mainstream social media when we're talking about Asia. So when it comes to social media here, I think the challenges that are presented when it comes to an ecosystem like Southeast Asia are very unique. Unlike the EU, as an example, ASEAN is not really a collective, even from a very basic travel sense. There's so many languages. So I often say if you move a 250 kilometers in one direction, north, south, east, or west, you will hear a different language. And that is very much the case when it comes to Southeast Asia, whether it's English, Mandarin, Tamil, Vietnamese, Thai, and even more dialects. So just within Singapore, as an example, there's over 60 dialects that are spoken. Not only are the languages different, the scripts that come with those languages are different. So when it comes to tracking this kind of data, being able to track things like Unicode are very, very important. On top of that, your kind of online and e-commerce platforms are also completely different. What works in Singapore doesn't work in Indonesia, doesn't work in other places. And purchase behavior and your motivations and barriers vary not only by country, so not just Indonesia to Malaysia, but even state to state. And so you'll see that some of the bigger cities have some purchasing patterns that are not necessarily the same as the neighboring state. Of course, this is also because GDP and literacy levels also change from state to state, and transport connectivity is still a challenge. So getting from, Singapore to Indonesia, as an example, there's very limited airports and everything else needs to be done by sea or by domestic flight. So with that, I want to talk about social media usage and mobile connectivity. So when it comes to Southeast Asia is still number 6 when it comes to overall social media penetration, but it's number 3 when it comes to mobile penetration. And what that really means is that everybody in Southeast Asia, or the majority of people at least, accessed the internet or social media platforms for the first time ever through their mobile phones and not through their laptops. And I think that in itself says so much, because it means that you kind of grew up as a mobile first economy. So you had a mobile phone in your hand way before you even knew what a laptop was or a computer. And you certainly didn't have one of those modems that required you to, wait for hours and hours to dial in and make all those sounds. And what that really shows is that being a mobile first economy, the way that people use social media is also very different. And how they've accessed the internet is also very different. So if we look at the top social media apps when it comes to the Google Play Store, and we used Android rather than Apple because Android is the top OS in Southeast Asia. I have an Apple though, and Kay has an Android phone, but she has a Google phone. You'll see that, of course, we see the usual suspects. So we see Instagram and we see Facebook and Snapchat, etc., which are out there. But I think what's very interesting to note here is maybe some apps that kind of seem familiar, but are not exactly what you thought they would be. So Facebook Lite is basically a light version of Facebook that users in Indonesia and the Philippines download because it is much lighter to use than the regular Facebook app. And due to internet and data connectivity issues, that's the preferred mode of browsing through Facebook. Similarly, for apps like Bigo Live, which you may or may not be familiar with, those are live streaming apps, which are very, very big in this part of the world. So on that note, we see that when it comes to active social media users versus the total population, Malaysia and Singapore actually have the highest penetration when it comes to active social media users versus Indonesia, that has the highest population and the lowest penetration. However, time spent on social media in the Philippines and Indonesia is the highest, showing you that either internet connectivity is very bad, so it's taking you a much longer time to load the same content, or you're spending a lot more time on a multitude of social media platforms that you have access to. Advertising reach as well. So for this slide, we could only get data from the top 3 platforms that have the most mature advertising and commercial data available. So advertising reach when it comes to social media platforms in this part of the world as well, although Singapore does not have the highest advertising reach for Facebook, it is one of the few platforms where Twitter is quite evolved in, versus a place like Vietnam, where we see Facebook as the key driver of conversations and advertising reach for many different topics, and Twitter having very low penetration in terms of advertising reach. So with all this, you know, I'm sure you guys are aching to know, like, what do we really do? And what does it take for social platforms to kind of win in Southeast Asia? And for this section, I'm going to hand over to Kay.
Thanks, Prerna, for that wonderful introduction about social media in Southeast Asia. So at least now you kind of have an idea that social media is very big here, mobile is very big here. So we'd just like to share with you, like, what does it really take for social platforms to win in this part of the globe? So the first major thing to know is Southeast Asians are very proud of their culture. We're very proud of who we are, of where we came from. So here it's very important to localize. So what does that mean? Speak the language that people use or people understand, and also understand the things that are very important to them. So here we're just highlighting the top online forums for Indonesia, Thailand, Singapore, and Malaysia. And for all of these platforms, their origins were as tech focused forums. So that was their way in the market, but they have evolved since then. Like, for example, for Indonesia, they have Kaskus, which is their largest online community. So it started as a tech based forum, but it has now evolved into offering services like video, audio content like podcasts and digital radio, e-commerce, and even online payment services. So they have what it's called CashPay, which is their own online payment service. So as of 2014, they actually have 25 million users registering in their site. So for Thailand, they have Pantip, which Perna has mentioned earlier. So it is their largest online discussion forum. So from tech, they've also evolved to other topics such as politics, teen life, automobiles, other hobbies, etc., and now have 30 million unique visitors per month. For Singapore, we have Hardware Zone. So as the name suggests, it started as a tech forum, but people also use it to talk about topics like music, food, lifestyle, etc. And now it has 5 million visits per month. For Malaysia, they have the site called loyat.net. So it's their most popular forum and tech magazine. So they evolved to Loyat networks, and now they offer forums catering to e-commerce, automotive, sports, lifestyle, entertainment, etc. It's now Malaysia's top 11 website and has 3 million unique visitors per month. So as marketers or as brands, like, what do you need to know about these sites? So since this is where conversations happen, this is where people talk about things that are important to them, what's key here is to be at the center of it all, at the center of conversation. So if you see the examples that we have on this slide of how brands have marketed in these platforms, it's like being at the center of conversation. So sites such as Cascos, Pantip, and Loyat.net, they offer brands an ability to take over sub forums or to take over certain like threads, message threads, or sub communities in the platform to generate conversations about their brands and to also get genuine reviews from consumers. So for Singapore, Hardware Zone, which is a tech, mainly tech website, they give brands an opportunity to give their super fans first look of, for example, they have a product launch like Huawei. People can sign up to their product launch live stream in Hardware Zone. So that's the first thing to note. It's important, very important to localize in this region. And the second thing is, as Perna has said, like, most people here access social media and the internet primarily using their phones. So as cheesy as it may sound, it's true. The way to Southeast Asians' hearts is through their phones. So these three apps, very interesting apps from Philippines, Vietnam, and Thailand, are what we want to show you. So Philippines, we have a homegrown app called Kumu. So Kumu, it's from the Filipino or Tagalog or Spanish term kumusta, which is hello. It's a live streaming platform which was primarily used by content creators to reach out to their fans. So in China, you may be familiar with Taobao Live, where content creators or online influencers can reach out to their fans, and in turn, their fans can give them gifts or other things. So Kumu works in the same way, but it has then evolved to also cover content by traditional media networks. So I just like to share that one of the major news that happened this year in the Philippines is the biggest media broadcaster called ABS-CBN. They weren't granted a franchise by the Congress for some reason. So they had to digitalize very fast. And how they did that, of course, was launching their own website or their YouTube page, etc. But they also used Kumu. So they made their shows available to Kumu. So people, although they can't watch ABS-CBN shows on TV or hear them on the radio, they can still consume their content through Kumu. So that's how powerful this app is. So how brands have marketed to this is through game shows. So game shows is like one of the top types of content that's housed in Kumu because it's a very engaging platform. So fans and influencers have a very personal communication here. So they can do stuff like live stream game shows. So for Vietnam, they have Zalo. So Zalo is their term for hello, which they use in their phones. It's their number one messaging app. So it beat Facebook Messenger in that country, and it's preferred by most people for text messaging and calling because of the features that it has. And it is actually being used by 8 out of 10 smartphone users in Vietnam. So brands, what they can do for in Zalo is have a personal relationship with their consumers. So for example, Coke, they released very personalized stickers on this app where people can actually put their faces on the stickers. So that's how personal it can get. For Thailand, they have Line. So Line, you may be familiar with this because it came from Japan actually. It's a messaging platform, but it has then evolved in Thailand. So now they've ventured into digital commerce as well. So if you're a restaurant or if you're a food brand, make your products available online so that consumers can get your products on demand. So they have this delivery service called Line Man, which is very popular in Thailand, which most people actually use to get food, refreshments, etc. So now we want to show you some case studies that we have for some of the past projects that we've done with our actual clients, which shows you how specifically to target audiences in Southeast Asia. So we're going to cover case studies from industries such as food delivery, snacking, tech, beauty, and even entertainment. So to start off for food delivery, we did this research study during the COVID-19 lockdown period in Southeast Asia. And we actually found that it's the developing countries such as Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, and Vietnam that saw a surge in conversations and interest for food delivery. So it's not just food delivery in general, but it's actually to support local and home businesses. So as you can see, conversations about food delivery were higher in these markets versus East Asia, like South Korea, Hong Kong, or Japan, which had a more mature, tech savvy consumers. So just to give you a quick overview of what are the popular delivery apps here. So for Singapore, you may have heard of Deliveroo, but there are also local apps here. Like for Thailand, Food Panda is the most popular. For Malaysia and Philippines, it's Grab Food. So Grab Food is by this company called Grab. So here in this region, there are what we call super apps. So they're apps that offer different types of services. So Grab offers ride hailing services, food delivery services, um, cargo delivery services, and they also have their own digital payment service. And GoFood as well, which is by this Indonesian super app called Gojek. While for Vietnam, they have what it's called Now. So Now, it's an app that you use to get products from local businesses. So like that corner stall that sells local delicacies, you can buy them using this app called Now in Vietnam. So we also looked specifically to snacking motivations in these markets for during the COVID-19 lockdown period. And what we saw was, although these countries were very close in terms of um, geographical distance, the motivations for snacking during this period were very different. So countries like Vietnam and Thailand, they most of the people there predominantly snack to indulge themselves, so to make themselves feel better while on lockdown by eating very delicious local delicacies. While people in Singapore, Malaysia, and Philippines, they used snacks to reach out to their community, to be one with their community, to share happiness with migrant workers, frontliners, doctors, nurses, and also to support local businesses. For Indonesia, on the other hand, since people spent a lot of time at home, they had more time in their hands to discover hobbies such as cooking, making their own snacks, and most of them actually sold this to other people to earn extra income during this difficult time. So for tech, what we want to show here is how it's very important to know how to talk to your audience and to know who your audience actually is. So this study, we did this for a digital commerce service where we found that in different countries in Southeast Asia, there are different sectors to tap. So, for example, in Vietnam, what we found was it's very important to use the perspective of moms and how the services will benefit them and improve their day to day life. So, how will it help them do their grocery shopping or other chores at home? While for Thailand, which has a relatively more mature gaming market versus other countries in Southeast Asia, it's gamers that use these services first. So they have this local telco called True, which has a service called WeCard, which is like a digital wallet. And we saw from social media mentions that it's actually gamers that use this a lot. In fact, on YouTube, they share videos showing how to use it by buying games from Steam, which is an online games distribution platform. And when you look at comments, you can actually see them helping other people troubleshoot transaction problems using True Wallet. So this is one of the interesting things that we found from that study. So for beauty, K-pop is very hot in this region of the world. So they rule, K-pop stars rule the local influencer ecosystem in Indonesia, Philippines, and Thailand specifically. So brands like SK2, Estee Lauder, and Shiseido, they've tapped K-pop idols and groups such as Taekyon, Twice, and Wavy to endorse their products. And some of these campaigns were actually not done in this region. They were done in China or Korea, but fans here, since they follow all their idols' every move, they also talk about these campaigns, even though it didn't happen exactly here. So these campaigns made them aware of those products and brands. So for entertainment, it's also important to know that Southeast Asians discuss their favorite shows and idols very differently. So, specifically for the Philippines, which is still one of the most dynamic and highly penetrated TV markets in APAC, TV is very important. People still watch a lot of TV. And where do they discuss these shows? It's on Twitter. And how do they discuss these? So, what's interesting to note is TV shows here have a different hashtag for every episode. So the hashtag for today is different from the hashtag tomorrow. And fans do everything they can to make these hashtags trend on Twitter. And if you can see one of the tweets here, they were talking about their strategy, like only use one hashtag per tweet so that our hashtags rank on the trending list will get higher. So they know how trending on Twitter or the trending ranking on Twitter works. And you know, they've already studied that from many campaigns or for many shows that their idols had. They already know the process. So we want to share with you this table also, which shows the top most discussed TV series in 2018 in the Philippines. And although there are international or global shows, most of them are still local shows. And these local shows people talk about a lot, especially on Twitter. And also for entertainment, it's also important to note that cultural nuances dictate the main consideration factor that people may have in choosing entertainment services, specifically online streaming. So Thai people, they're very cost sensitive and they do everything they can to reduce their entertainment expenses. So they make Facebook groups where they find other people who want to share their Netflix subscription with, and they also tweet about sharing their View subscription. So View is like Netflix but for Korean content. While for Malaysia, even though it's also a developing country, yes, cost is important for them. But what's the most important consideration factor for them is that these streaming services, such as Netflix, allow them to watch content that would otherwise be censored in their traditional channels. So Malaysia is a primarily Muslim nation, so they can't watch movies like Fifty Shades of Grey or other types of movies on TV or on the cinemas. So they subscribe to Netflix so that they can watch these shows, which are censored in traditional channels. So just to summarize everything, we just want to leave you with these three key things to win in Southeast Asia social media. So first, content localization. So people prefer things that they can understand, which are made by people who understands them and what are important to them. Second, mobile accessibility, since most people here access internet only in their phones, so they should be able to see or use your content on their phones. And lastly, sensitivity to cultural nuances. So the content or the brand must respect their values and things that are important to them. So let me hand it back to Perna to leave you with something that we want you to think about after this presentation.
Thanks so much for that, Kay. That was really interesting. And no, not to watch 50 Shades of Grey while in Malaysia, since it's going to be censored if I head over there. So I think the last thing that we want to leave you guys with is if any of you has ever been to Thailand, you would have seen this very fun phrase called "same but different." And that's really how we like to describe Southeast Asia. I think there's a lot of similarities and threads that kind of bind the six nations together, but there are slight differences when it comes to each of these, just like you find same but different in Singapore, same but different in Vietnam, and same but different in other parts of Southeast Asia as well. So we can't get you guys the t-shirt, but when we can travel again, this should be definitely at the top of your shopping list. And now we'd love to answer any questions that anybody has from the attendees.
Thank you very much. That's excellent. So we have had a couple of questions while you were speaking. So I'm just going to send these over to you. So many sub-Saharan African countries, like Kenya especially, have seen a massive rise in social platforms offering online payment solutions for almost everything, from goods to services, with the aim of reducing the use of cash in their economies. Is Southeast Asia also seeing this trend?
Great question. And although we didn't speak about it as much, but maybe I'll just hop back over to this slide over here. I think this is a huge trend that we see all across Southeast Asia as well. And Kay, just feel free to jump in anywhere. With the rise of super apps, particularly in this part of the region, like Grab and Gojek, those would be the two biggest super apps in Southeast Asia. They offer a peer-to-peer payment system. What GrabPay has also done very successfully in a lot of Southeast Asia is to integrate that with merchants. And so now you can scan a QR code and pay for anything from groceries to lunch to a bottle of Coke at a food court that in the past would typically only accept cash. So we have seen in this part of the world as well a very I want to say quick adoption to cashless payment.
Perfect. Thanks so much. So someone in the chat has said, is there a different profile of user who tends to use global platforms, e.g. Facebook, Instagram, Netflix, and watch Game of Thrones, versus the profile of people who tend to watch local content and use local apps and networks, e.g. by age, gender, etc.?
Kay, you want to start with that answer and then I can add on?
So for the major platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, etc., it seems that for this region, it's slowly starting to be like more of the older audience already. So the kids are moving into new platforms such as TikTok or Kumu or those other live streaming platforms. As for entertainment content or shows such as Game of Thrones versus local content, um, we did a study actually on entertainment, so we gave you a snippet of that study earlier. In terms of demographics, mm, there's really not much difference actually, but it differs on the setting or the situation wherein you consume those content. So what we see is for local content, most people consume it with their family at home, like they watch it using the TV. But Game of Thrones and streaming platforms such as Netflix, they watch it alone because they use their laptop to watch it. So yeah, I guess like those Western content like Game of Thrones or Netflix, um, I guess
Yeah,
like it's a mix of like young audience and like older audiences as well.
sure. And I'll just jump in there and just add in that there is a lot of reach amongst um, almost all age groups when it comes to demographics on platforms like Facebook versus like what Kay was saying, if you look at platforms like Bigo Live, so that's a live streaming platform all across Asia, and Snapchat and TikTok, you'll see that is typically for the slightly younger audience. Versus the second part of that question, if I remember correctly, when it comes to the kind of content that you are consuming, for a lot of the local markets here, content is actually dubbed into local language as well. So if you're talking about Game of Thrones in English, is the demographic different? Absolutely, because that will be your educated demographic that speaks English language. If you're talking about Game of Thrones or a movie that's been dubbed into Thai, you suddenly have access to a much larger audience. And we also see this with gaming. You know, we have a gaming client that dubs games into Thai for the local Thai audience.
That's really interesting. I didn't think of gaming, so that's
Yeah,
very
that's it's
fascinating.
if you own a PlayStation or an Xbox and you live in Thailand, you will will find that the games are dubbed into Thai, along with all the commentary and all the graphics and stuff.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
So we've got more questions. So someone has said, you guys haven't mentioned TikTok. They would like to know how popular it is, and as an app which started in Asia, did it build its base differently from the US platforms like Facebook, Twitter, etc.?
I can maybe start on that answer. TikTok in China, which is where the app is from. I can't I can't pronounce the name correctly, so I'm not going to try. Is only meant for users in China, and then the TikTok that the rest of the world, like us, have access to is slightly different. So we couldn't find the most updated stats from TikTok since they're a little bit more private about some of their information. Like that, but we do see a huge rise here amongst the under 30s in the usage of TikTok. I think and maybe the reason we don't have enough information on this right now is because brands today haven't really figured out how they want to use TikTok and create content and promote content on there just yet. But into our platform, we have been able to integrate TikTok data recently. And what I'd be happy to do is maybe update some of these slides maybe later with whatever TikTok information we get and share that with you guys.
That'd be a really big help. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I'd also like to share TikTok. Like they say, it's the #1 pastime that Filipinos had during COVID lockdown. So like everyone was just on TikTok. And interestingly, now that kids are starting to do online learning, some of their teachers actually make them do school projects or assignments using TikTok. So like a trend that's going on here in the Philippines on TikTok is like dress up as your favorite national hero and like act like that national hero on TikTok. So students also use it for learning. So that's very interesting.
That's really interesting.
Oh.
Sounds like a lot of fun as well.
Yeah.
So another question. Insofar as you can say, it's quite a big question. What do you think the next big social media trend in Southeast Asia will be?
Oh gosh, the question to end them all, right? Um, what will the next big trend? Okay, tough question, and a great question. I think although I don't want to predict the future, and Kay, I'm sure you have your own interpretation of this. I think one of the things that has happened due to COVID, especially in this part of the world, based on the most recent stats that we read, was from Q1 to Q2, there was a 60% increase in social media usage and time spent on social media this year. So what's very interesting about that stat is last year I had read a stat that said that people are kind of moving away from social media when it comes to things like privacy and other things like that. But I particularly see, and I'm speaking for Southeast Asia and APAC at the moment, that this trend is really here to stay, and the usage of social media and how you use social media is really here to stay. And you kind of see teenagers and Gen Z grow up very comfortable with using things like live streaming on Hago, Bigo Live, Up Live, and a lot of these other live streaming platforms that are actually bigger in Southeast Asia than anywhere else in the world. And then they actually go over to the US. So I think when it comes to social media as a whole, like where is this going? I think live streaming, if it isn't already a big thing in the West, it is going to become very, very huge as time goes on, because it already is very big in Asia. When it comes to platform usage specifically, I mean, Bigo Live was like nothing, like 4 or 5 years ago. I remember downloading the app about 3 years ago to look at something for a brand. And now it's everywhere. Now it's huge in the States as well. But it's not even something that, dare I say, anybody my age has heard of. But if I speak to somebody 10 years younger, they're all on it. And I think that's why live streaming, just as a lifestyle, is going to be something that is very, very huge in the coming years. Okay.
Yeah, I agree with live streaming too. And I guess what I can add is people will become content creators. Like how do I say, like, you don't have to be a celebrity to be a content creator. So anyone can be famous on YouTube or on TikTok. And that's what's actually happening here. Like, there's this story of a kid, like, here in the Philippines. So one day she had 2 subscribers on YouTube, and she celebrated, like, she posted a photo of a cake, like, happy 2 subscribers. And the post got viral. Like, she got hundreds and thousands of likes or shares, and the next day she had like 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. So, like, I guess, like, for this region, anyone can be a star. Like, you can be great in whatever you're doing online, and you can be famous in a snap.
Story of the egg, right? The egg and the, what was it, 1 million likes for the egg, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that one. So another question from our audience. Someone has said, is privacy more of a concern for users in Southeast Asia compared to other markets?
Great question. Certainly no comparison to the EU. Okay. Uh, GDPR is something that is still very, very EU specific. But I do think that it's something that people are being more aware of and are more conscious of than maybe 10, 12 years ago when I started working in social media to today. Is it as big of a concern as it is in the West and in Australia? No, not at this stage at all. I think most of the privacy concerns are typically government driven at the moment and not specifically from users. So, like Kay was sharing earlier, people are happy to go onto a Facebook group and have 4 anonymous users like share Netflix passwords and are kind of aware that maybe governments are watching what they're up to and or maybe following what they're doing. And so although it's a concern, I think it's more a concern on not the content I share on social media, but maybe with things like cryptocurrency and distrust of governments.
Yeah, and I guess one big concern also in this region is by parents, because, like, kids, this is also related to gaming. Like, a lot of kids are into Minecraft, and in Minecraft you can chat with strangers, right? So there has been instances where they suddenly see their kid, like, talking to this 40-year-old man on Minecraft and asking, like, what's your Facebook name, or what's your, like, something password. So I guess that's one of the concerns. So more of child safety. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we have time for just one more question. So someone has said, lots of examples are local, as in from one country. Are these platforms expanding across Southeast Asia? Which ones? And do some of them have ambitions beyond Asia?
Great question. Can I use from here? I use Hardware Zone as an example, maybe to start with. Hardware Zone, like Kay mentioned, is a big tech forum and is now present in Singapore and Malaysia, but they started out from Singapore. But maybe just to kind of go back to even here with Line. Line is a Japanese app, like Kay had mentioned, which is now the top app in Thailand as well. It's like a version of a WhatsApp, so to speak, but you can also do other things like order food on it. In terms of where the apps kind of start from, I think it is very much something that you kind of start with one region here because it is Southeast Asia as a region is very fragmented. So you might start with one, or you might scale in one market first, spread within Southeast Asia, and then plan to go over. So like I was giving the example of Bigo Live. Bigo Live is now very much something that is growing in the US as well, and is actually huge. Heygo, we were just looking into that. I'm not sure where it started, but what is it called, Kay? Hangouts, Hangout and something. And
Oh, Hangout and Games. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like it's again like a live streaming and gaming app, and we've already seen that kind of spread across Southeast Asia as well. Do we see these spill over into Western markets? It is typically harder for them, but the ones that have scaled significantly in Southeast Asia, they might go to Korea and Japan first and then find it much easier to go over to the US. And so is there that plan for global domination? I mean, if these guys don't get bought out in many cases, absolutely. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks so much. All right, well, I think that's actually all we have time for today, unfortunately. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop your screen sharing so that I can share your details. That's it. Oh, thank you. So I'm just going to share your details on the screen so that you can, so that everyone can follow up with questions if you didn't have time to ask. So I just wanted to give a really, really big thank you to Prerna and Kay for that fantastic webinar. As I mentioned, if you'd like to send any follow-up questions or you didn't have time for your questions to be asked, you can email our speakers at prerna.pant@circussocial.com or Kay or Busan at circussocial.com. And you can also find more about Circus Social on their website, which is www.circussocial.com. So future webinar Wednesdays can be found on thenetworkone.com/webinars. We thank you all very much for coming to this webinar. Hope you enjoyed it. As usual, the next one will be held next Wednesday. And I'm actually going to pass over to my colleague, Paul Squirrel, to tell you a little bit more about it.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you
that was really fun and great to meet everybody. Thank you from Singapore and the Philippines.
Fabulous. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. That was wonderful. Really enjoyed that and learnt a lot. Now it's shameless plug time. Next week's webinar is going to be a bit of a creative canter. You probably all know that we produce this every year, the world's leading independent agencies, and we like to showcase the agencies that take part in it. Next week, we have 3 wonderful agencies that will be presenting what makes them special, what makes them wonderful creative agencies. We have Perfect Storm from the UK. We have Curio from Finland, and Officer and a Gentleman from Spain. Please, I invite you all to come along and join us. It's going to be amazing. They're going to tell their stories, what makes them special. They're very different agencies, and I hope we're going to learn a lot. So same time next week. Thanks, Steph.